The anime begins as we see a band of warriors struggling so hard to defeat an earth dragon, until a dragon knight called Davian arrives with his friend Bram on their horses to help them out. Davian dives into the dragon, taking its attention away from the other fighters, and tries to slice the dragon with his sword, but the body is just like a stone, which shattered his sword to pieces. As the so-called warriors were hiding at the other corner in fear watching the fight, we see Davian, who comes up with another strategy, as he smartly ties a rope around the dragon's body, avoiding the attacks at the same time, but the dragon escapes by diving back into the ground, unwinding the entire rope he tied on it. Immediately he finds his way into the dragon nest underground, where he still got attacked again, but he immediately uses the advantage of the rope attached to its body and started to stab the dragon aggressively on the stomach, until he finally killed it. That was when Bam and the other warriors were brave to also enter the caves, and started to decapitate the killed dragon. The captain of the fighter, whose name is revealed to be Fruling, started to call the dragon a piece of shit, but Davian is like, if you dare dishonor my killing again, then you're next. One of the warriors suddenly makes a terrifying discovery in the cave, which turns out to be a nest of hatchlings. Davian came to the conclusion that the dragons all went crazy and tore each other apart, but as they went further, they discovered a tunnel that has been dug by a very powerful dragon called the Eldworm, but Davian was like, luckily they are not dead, which means the Eldworm is still asleep, but the captain tries to convince him that this is their best chance to take down the beast, but Davian obviously knows how powerful an Eldworm is, and prepares himself to head back to the village to celebrate his survival. But the captain turns out to be so disappointed at his decision, calling him a coward. Davian and Bram returns back to the village, where the townspeople were cheering them all, because these people have really suffered from dragon attacks. But Davian, who is now seen as a living legend, brought the head of the dragon as a trophy, turning the villagers' tears of sorrows into joy. Davian sees some group of people crying at the corpse of some dead warriors. He notices there is a child among them, and concluded that one of the dead warriors must be his father. So he goes to the kid, saying his father really died a brave man, and cheers him up by gifting him with a dragon fang. We later see Davian and Bam, who were celebrating with the villagers, with Bam dramatically narrating on how they fought the dragon. Davian goes to order another round of drink for everyone, until he was interrupted by a girl wearing a teria, who told him she was in line first. He immediately apologizes to her and allows her make her order. The girl requested for 2 cold drink, which the barkeeper handed over to her, charging 2 crown for them, but the girl opposes as it's too expensive for a wine that smells so terrible. Davian interrupted, asking the barkeeper to put her orders on his tab, but the barkeeper was like, if that's the case, the drinks are now free. The girl became so confused, asking why he charged her 2 crowns for the drinks in the first place, but his orders only turns out to be free. The barkeeper suddenly replies that Davian is their hero, who has slain numerous dragons for their village, so of course his drinks deserves to be free. But Captain Fruling, who overhears everything, interrupted them, saying how Davian failed to kill one powerful dragon known as the Eldworm, and tries disgracing him in front of the crowd, calling him a coward for running away. But Davian suddenly grabs the guy by his collar, and menacingly tells him that even 1,000 men at once cannot kill an Eldworm, and waking the monster will only mean death for everyone in the village. He turns around to continue his conversation with the girl in the tiara, but realizes that she's already gone. The girl takes the 2 drinks to a table where her partner was waiting for her. A strange man in a hooded mantle meets with her, whose name is revealed to be Gwanwyn, who seems to be afraid that their business is happening at a bar occupied with humans. The girl was demanding for a very special artifact which she believes to be in his possession, in exchange of her expensive bracelet. But Gwanwyn specifically tells her that he doesn't have the artifact with him, but directed her into going to a black market in a place called Hauptstadt, where she will meet a man known as Nikto, who is going to give her what she's looking for. After a successful negotiation between both of them, a drunkard in the bar meets with the girl, claiming her to be his future wife, but suddenly turns his attention to Gwanwyn for stealing her from him. As the drunkard pulls him up, his cloak fell back, revealing his identity to be an elf. Everyone in the tavern is so surprised by this, while the drunkard started throwing racial slurs at him, as they all believe the elves to be murderous animals. Davian suddenly gets up as the man pulls out a knife to attack, and calms the situation, saying he will handle the elf by himself, but as soon as he takes the guy outside, he tells him to flee for his life, while the girl and her partner had followed Davian, expecting the worst. As the elf leaves, he addresses the girl as a princess, and immediately runs away. Davian is so shocked to find out that she's really a princess, but later goes back to the bar, demanding for another round. Meanwhile, we see Captain Fruling, who was seeing flashes of memories on how his men was killed by a dragon. A voice suddenly appears in his head, and he sees a reflection of a demon in his sword, who tells Captain Fruling that he can be granted the power to kill a dragon, even the Eldworm itself, gaining more fame than Devion. But the only way this can be accomplished is if he willingly allows himself to be possessed, which the captain complies without hesitation. The next morning, Davian wakes up with a woman on his bed until Bram slams the door in a matter of urgency, informing Devion about how Captain Fruling went alone all by himself to slay the Eldworm, which leaves Devion so frustrated, calling the captain a fool. Immediately, he puts on his clothes and rides off with a horse without wasting a second, to stop Fruling from disturbing the dragon. After a long journey, he finally arrives at the caves only to find Captain Fruling killing a giant green dragon that lies motionless on the ground. Devion is so shocked, as this guy just did what thousands of men cannot do, which is killing an Eldworm alone. He sees his eyes glowing, and looking at the way the captain was sounding, he knew the captain is possessed by a demon. The demon, who is now in control of the captain's body, tells Devion to allow him inside his body, and he will grant him the power to kill any kind of dragon, and reminded him about a painful moment in his past on when he was still a child, and how he stood helplessly watching his father to be killed by a dragon. All of a sudden, the whole place started to crumble, and another Eldworm shows up, commanding the demon to free Ildurak's soul. We find out the captain is possessed by the most powerful demon in existence called Terrorblade, and the Eldworm is called Slyric, who is known to be the father of fire. As the demon was confidently challenging him, Slyric releases a plume of fire which burns down the captain, intending to terminate the demon, but it ended up possessing a dead Eldworm which he killed earlier, known to be the Ildurak they were talking about. Seeing this, Slyric advises Davian to run for his life, while he is left so surprised on how the Eldworm spared his life. He hides himself in a corner, as a possessed Eldworm and Slyric were fighting each other. Slyric was overpowered by Terrorblade in the fight, and when Davian realizes the dire situation, he decided to make a move to save the Slyric, piercing the opposing dragon right through its heart, making the demon to live its body, returning back to hell. Unfortunately, Slyric is already half dead from the serious injury he obtained from the fight. Devion honors the dragon for fighting so bravely and tries to put it to rest because it was going through so much pain, but just as he was about to lift his sword, Slyric slashes his throat with his claws, and Devion suddenly falls down to the ground dead. After a few moments, we see Devion covered with blood, who turns out to be surprisingly alive after he was impaled by a dragon claw. A group of bandits suddenly surrounded him in the middle of the forest and knocks him out. The princess and her friend called Marcy finds Devion naked in the middle of the forest, who turns out to still be alive. She wasn't really interested in helping him out, as she believes it's not her responsibility to protect people from themselves, but as Marcy gives the princess a disapproving look, she was finally ordered to help him out. Marcy carries the unconscious Devion as if he has no weight at all, as her strength turns out to be really extraordinary for a girl. Davian later wakes up unable to remember the details of last night, including his encounter with the dragon. Davian gets to know the princess better, and her name is revealed to be called Mirana. Immediately, he escorted Mirana and Marcy to a place called Hauptstadt, so they can find their next lead. The princess and her companion were later getting themselves ready to head their way to the black market after getting some directions from the innkeeper, while Davian, who drowns himself with an alcohol, vomited a ring that belongs to one of the bandit that attacked him the other night. A customer who sees the ring recognizes it to belong to one of his friend, which he found at the roadside with his body torn to pieces along with 5 other companions. Logically, the guy concluded that Devion is a cannibal who fed on his friends. Devion had to defend himself as the guy brought out a dagger, who promises to return back for revenge along with his men. The innkeeper politely tells Devion to leave his place, knowing if that guy returns with his men, it will destroy his whole inn, might even end up taking his life. While as for Princess Mirana and Marcy, they ended up at the black market, entering a place full of luxuries, treasures, and pleasures, to find a man called Nikto, according to the elf's directions. As soon as she met with Nikto, she offers to hand him her trinket so she can get some information concerning the special artifact she's looking for, but it turns out that the elf Gwenwyn had already betrayed her, as he already made a deal with Nikto beforehand, ordering her capture. They are both taken downstairs to the prison where Gwenwyn was planning to sell Marcy to one of the merchants, but this girl is a really competent fighter, as she subdued all the henchmen with her superhuman strength, while Mirana forces the information she's looking for out of Gwenwyn, and immediately knocks the idiot out. Meanwhile, Davian goes to the blacksmith to buy a sword, so he can defend himself from the bandits. The blacksmith refuses to give him a sword in exchange of the bandit ring, knowing it might cost his life. The desperate Devion suddenly decided to try his luck on gambling using the ring as a bet, but he failed miserably. Princess Mirana goes to a shopkeeper to know the whereabouts of the artifact. Knowing her identity, he tells them to meet a sage who stays in a tower in a valley south of the Broken Peaks, and handed her a green gem, which serves as the only access of meeting the person. Soon later, Mirana meets Devion, who seems to be waiting for the bandits that are about to attack him. She knows he will be fighting a losing battle because he has no weapon nor allies, and proposes to him to instead accompany them on their quest. But Devion refuses, knowing running away will only be dishonoring himself. Mirana leaves him, while Marcy handed him a dagger so he can least fight. Soon enough, the bandits arrives with their horses, which turns out to be around 20 to 30 armed men who surrounded Devion. Mirana and Marcy couldn't leave him alone to die, and assisted him in the fight by shooting the bandits with her arrows from a very far distance. Overwhelmed by the number of men, Devion is stabbed on his back with a sword, and being so angry, his body suddenly transforms into a half-human and a half-dragon, and killed all the men brutally. When he gets back to his normal self, he was immediately in full regret on what he has done, and was like, "What have I done? What am I?" Mirana and Marcy seems to be also terrified witnessing the transformation, but they still offers him a ride as the royal guards were about to arrest him. He agrees to follow them on their quest to find the sage, hoping he gets answers concerning dragons. Suddenly we see a flashback, where a mysterious elf girl called Fimrin is sneaking inside a place called the Night of Sliver Wood to steal an artifact called the Sacred Lotus. This girl has the ability to shapeshift into any form, and uses it to try and deceive Princess Mirana and Marcy, who saw her, but looking at the lotus gone. They were able to find out her intentions and chases after her, but weren't able to catch up with her due to she also has the ability to split into multiple versions of herself. Back to the present, Fimrin, who stole the lotus, takes it to her friends, who commended her for her bravery and craziness. We later see her telling her fellow elves a story about their god called Nene, who is known as the goddess of the moon, and was trapped in the shadows of a dark moon goddess known as Selemony. Fimrin believes the lotus she stole will be the key to release their god, thereby claiming back their land. Fimrin convinces her friends on joining her in a mission to find the sage in the tower, who is also known as a sorcerer, that has the ability to unleash the powers of the lotus, so they can free their god. Meanwhile, Devion has been having nightmares of the dragon speaking to him. In fact, he has this strange feeling that they are all inside of him, but according to Mirana, who told him the sage can give him all the answers he's looking for, they immediately continued their journey, where they began to face a really terrifying snowstorm at the mountains. The situation gets worse as there was an earthquake, which leads to Mirana falling off, but Devion catches onto her with the help of Marcy, who weren't capable of holding her much longer. Mirana, not wanting her friends to die along with her, suddenly cuts the rope and falls off the cliff alone. Meanwhile, Fimrin finds the Tower of the Sage, which seems to be invisible in front of others. They seem to be teleported as they moved inside the peaks, discovering a wondrous structure around a gorgeous landscape, just like the stories. The tower halls appears to really huge, filled up with magical books and paintings. Suddenly, all our friends were nowhere to be found in the tower, while Fimrin was confronted by the sage, who told her to leave after she handed the lotuses to him, calling her a thief. Fimrin was like, she has gone this far, and bringing back her goddess will mean so much to her and her people. But the sage tells her that the goddess is dead, and teleported her into the forest with her friends, leaving a gold coin for her troubles. On the other hand, Mirana is revealed to have survived, and is waking through the snowing mountains on her own, until she encounters a cannibal who tries to attack her, but she quickly kills it with her dagger. Unfortunately, the cannibals were increasing in number, which leads to her arming herself with her bow and arrow, shooting them one by one until her last shot, but luckily Devion comes to her rescue, and they escaped on the back of her beast along with Marcy. While sleeping, Fimrin and her friends were apprehended by a female warrior, Luna, who claim her goddess Mene is the Dark Lady, who will bring endless darkness to the world. She tells them to hand over the lotuses to her, but as her friends tries to defend her, they were all killed tragically. Fimrin tries to escape with her powers, but she was still caught by Luna, who used the light of the moon to find her, but the sage, who was watching the whole thing from his mirror, rescues her immediately from the danger using his magic. Meanwhile, Mirana tells Devion how worried she is concerning the cannibals she saw, because she knows they are still people and wonders what really made them that way. After a long journey, they finally found an empty building to stay for the night. Devion senses Mirana to be so troubled, and tells her that he will always be ready to listen if she wants to share her worries. Suddenly, the gates of the building opens, and we see DragonKnight called Caden dragging the corpse of a powerful dragon he recently killed. Devion seems to be so shocked, because it would have taken hundreds of men to bring down an adult dragon. They narrates all their adventures to Kaden, who was busy butchering the dragon as they speak. Kaden notices that Mirana is really disturbed by this act and tells her that dragons are killing machines that are just meant to be extinct. Davian started getting strange feelings, urging him to attack Kaden, but he stylishly excuses himself. Mirana advises Davian to explain to Kaden about his situation, believing he can be of great help to him. During dinner, Kaden expresses his hatred for Slyrek, who killed his friends and massacred his villagers before his eyes, and as the only survivor, he went on a mission to kill Slyrek only to find the dragon nest empty, but came across Davian's necklace, which gave him a hint that Davian also showed up at Dragon's Lair. Kaden begs him that he really needs answers concerning Slyrek's location, or how he was able to survive in the midst of two powerful dragons. Davian opens up to him that ever since he entered the dragon's nest, he lost all the memories of what happened that night, but Kaden comforts him, offering to help him out. Mirana notices Davian to be really acting strange, until she realizes that he is really terrified as he believes Slyrek is inside of him, which might lead to Kaden killing him if he finds out. Mirana tells him to be cool, because Kaden is a dragon knight like him, and is surely going to understand. Meanwhile, the sage questions Fimrin about her powers, and she replies that she has the ability to be invisible, splitting into many versions of herself, and most especially, moving through shadows, which it's more effective at night. She narrates her dream when she freed her goddess, and how peace was brought back to her land, and then lashes out at the sage for having so many books and so much magic, yet he decides to do nothing. Damien wakes up from a very horrifying nightmare, only for him to be electrocuted by Kaden, who captures him and takes him underground. He impales all areas of Davian's body, commanding Slyrek to live his body. After more pain and torture, this forces Slyrek to be awakened inside of him, and that was how this episode ended. Thank you for watching, guys. As soon as this video reaches 20,000 views, the rest of the episodes will be posted. If you love animation movies, please subscribe to this channel and keep watching. Bye.